Thank you so much. I so enjoyed listening to. I've heard Larry speak many times, and he just always inspires me with his love of literature. And I love Larry. I love your new book. I just feel like it's such an important book right now, and I like to say it's a great companion to my Powerful Understanding book because we're both kind of focusing on literature and the tough topics. And Lana, I've never heard you speak before, but I so enjoyed listening to you, and I'm really looking forward to reading your book. So thank you for that. So I am last. I don't know if they put me last because I talked too much and they needed to cut me off, but I have like 900 slides. So put on your seatbelts. I'm going to go really quickly through this, but hopefully we'll give you just a little taste of the book. That's me. Many of you already know me if you've heard me speak. I do a lot of work in BC, of course, and then I often travel to Reading for the Love of It. So you may have heard me speak before, but this book was released, like Lana's, just at the beginning of just before COVID hit. So I didn't really get a chance to present a lot on it, although I've been doing some webinars. But today I just want to touch on 3 parts of this book. I'd like to talk very briefly about what does a balanced writing program look like. I want to introduce you to Brain Pockets if you haven't already heard me speak about that, and then just talk about writing text structures, because that's what the book is really built around, is how do you teach children in the course of a year your the important different types of writing that children need to learn about. So just very briefly, at the beginning of the book, I really talk about setting up what I believe is an effective writing program and a balanced writing program, and what does that kind of contain. And I think when I first started teaching writing, it was all about the project writing and the product writing. It was very much about, okay, we're going to write about Halloween, and we're going to write about Thanksgiving, and we're going to write about poppies and peace for Remembrance Day. And everything was kind of put up on the bulletin board, and it was very product driven. But I've completely changed my approach now, and being that I believe that writing needs to be a process-based approach rather than product. So if I'm thinking about a balanced writing program, 70%, this is roughly, but 70% of my writing program I consider to be structured writing. That is formative assessment beginning with at the beginning of the year, and then responding to that assessment. This is where my teaching happens. I do guided writing, mini lessons, writer's workshop. I introduce something at the beginning of the school year called a write aloud. And that's very similar to a read aloud or a reading out loud, but we're writing out loud. We're modeling in front of the children, but we're talking through our writing and making our choices, word choices and punctuation choices audible for the kids so they hear us writing. And really building up just practice writes. I don't do a lot of publishing in my class anymore. I do a lot of practice writes, but 70% would be structured teaching. This is where we work on specific things that are going to help our children become better at writing. That might include what I call a weekly practice write. And I set this up again at the beginning of the year. It's all laid out in the book, but sort of a plan, draft, revise routine where Monday we plan, and usually based on a picture book and a topic and making a plan. And then Tuesday is draft day where we're drafting our practice write. And then Thursday is revision time. And revising is not revising to publish, but just revising because good writers always think about how they can make their writing a little bit better. So this is all outlined in the book as well. Unstructured time is time in the classroom during the week where children are writing completely on their own topic, completely unstructured. They're not given a topic necessarily. They're not given a mini lesson. They're just given a chance to write freely. And that can be in the form of a writing center in your classroom or journal writing, but this is where I'm going to focus on Brain Pockets shortly. Brain Pocket writing is my alternative to journal writing, but I believe that children need a chance to just write on any form, any paper, lots of different choices of paper and tools, pens and pencils and crayons and anything. But I think this is a chance for them to just try out writing on their own. And then 10% of my writing program is, I call the triple P, publish, project, and Pinterest. And of course, I'm a sucker for Pinterest too. We can all get caught up in the pinning the Pinterest ideas, but we don't want to spend more than about 10% of our year on those projects in Pinterest, because what we're doing with those is we're focusing again on the product. And what we want to do is focus on the process. And so what we want to think about is, yes, we want to publish, but it's not all about the publishing. So that's kind of how I set up at the beginning of the book, just sort of looking at the way that we sort of focus on those different percentages of our writing. I want to talk about the unstructured writing time now, which as we all have done in the past, many of us have done journal writing in school. I did journal writing as a beginning teacher. I loved journal writing because I didn't have to teach. And that was the greatest thing about journal writing. Let's just give children their journal because I need to rest. And so I'm going to sit at my desk and I'm going to tell them to write 16 pages in their journal. But what ends up happening is then we have to take it home and read it. And then we have to mark it. And it's always boring. And that's what I always found. I knew that when I was assigning, 16 pages of journal writing, that I'd have to read it. So journal writing, this is such a classic early primary journal. On Friday, I went to bed, and on Saturday, I went to the park, and on Sunday, I went dressed up, and I love my mom, and I love my dad, and my mom was cuddly, my mom was beautiful. It's just on and on and on and on. And so while that is great because it's, her own writing and it's unstructured, I always find now that the journal writing tends to be counterproductive to all of the things that I've taught in my regular structured time. Goes kind of out the window when it comes to the journal writing, because all they're doing is writing a list. So I introduce children at the early beginning of the year to brain pocket writing, which is an alternative to journal writing, but it gives it a bit more structure. So I talk about where do writers get their ideas from, and most writers are writing from things that they already have in their heads. But we have these different pockets in our brain that help us find our ideas for writing. We have a memory pocket. And those are the stories of our own experiences and memories. If we go to a birthday party, we can write about that memory. If we go on a camping trip, then we have that memory. We can use that as our source for writing. We have another pocket in our brain that's called our fact pocket. And that's a place that stores knowledge and information. And those are a really great source for when we're writing our nonfiction kind of writing, or we're writing information we want to share with our readers. And then our final pocket is called our imagination pocket. And that's a pocket that gives us all those imaginative ideas for when we want to write about unicorns or zombies or anything connected to our imagination. So based on this idea of brain pockets, I give my children this opportunity to think about their own brain pocket. So this would be an example of how I would be modeling this in the class. So if I was looking at my own memory pocket, these are some memories that I could use for writing. And then these are some facts that I know a lot about. And these are some things that I often just sometimes daydream and imagine about. What's in your pocket? So this is at the beginning of the year. We're just starting to learn about brain pockets and just brainstorm some possibilities. So then children will find their own notebook. So I give them a journal, exactly kind of like I would give a journal at the beginning of the year, but it's called our brain pocket notebook. And so this is where the first page of it, we're just exploring possibilities. So what would be some imagination, and what would be some facts, and what would be some memories that you could possibly write about? I loved this idea from a teacher. I was doing a workshop and we talked about brain pockets, and she sent me this. She said, I love this idea. She physically made these pockets with a chart paper. And when she was teaching the lesson, she was pulling out, it was so brilliant, pulling out the ideas from the pocket. I just thought that was lovely. So then once the children have that notebook, then rather than doing journal writing time once a week, I do brain pocket writing. And so that's the free choice. Brain pocket writing works really well at your writing center, or the whole class is doing it, or when children have finished something, they can do brain pocket writing. It works well to tie into daily 5. But brain pocket writing is free writing. The first thing you need to decide is, what pocket do I want to write about? What pocket am I going to use today for writing? And then I'm going to look possibly in my brainstorm page at the beginning, maybe choose something from there, or I could just write about my own. So I'm not going to read this because I don't have time. It's just about, this is a memory pocket piece from a grade 4 student who's writing about, he couldn't find his toothpaste. So he's going into the drawers in the bathroom, and eventually he finds something in his dad's drawer that he thinks is toothpaste, and he puts it on. And it turns out that it puffs out, and he starts brushing his teeth, and it's shaving cream. So you read this, and it's super interesting, and so much more interesting than, I went to the store, I went to the park, that kind of list writing. It gives it a much more feeling, more focused, interesting. So I'm just going to show you an example from fact pocket writing. So, there's kids in our classes that are just kind of like walking encyclopedias. Like, they're, especially primary children, the children that just love dinosaurs, and they can rattle off like amazing facts about dinosaurs, or kids that know everything about hockey. So there was a little boy in this particular class I was working with, and he just obsessed with airplanes. So everything was all about airplanes. Well, this was such a wonderful opportunity for him, because then he had so many facts up here about airplanes that he could tell. So when it came to fact pocket writing, he could just take a page and just write everything. So this is when he's talking about, did you know that airplanes have seat numbers, and that Boeing 777 has 5 exit doors, and Boeing 787 has 4 exit doors, and Boeing said there's an emergency exit, and I love this, because it just gives kids a chance to have those really amazing facts and ideas to do their writing. And then, of course, when I'm introducing Imagination Pocket, this is a great anchor book, by the way, when you're talking about Imagination Pocket, because it's just all about all the things that we can imagine and use as a source for writing. So that was my brain pocket. I told you I was going fast. I'm going as fast as I can. And the last thing I want to just share with you is just really the foundation of my book, which is all about the writing structures. And in the course of a year, what are the types of writing that we want to be teaching our children? We want them to be very comfortable with that particular form of writing. So I talk to kids about the idea of writing structures, and I use the analogy of when we see a building that's being built. We drive by, we see an apartment building being built, maybe in the downtown, or we see a house being built. But no matter what is being built, it always begins with a frame. And the frame is what actually supports the building, whether it be a house or an apartment or a skyscraper. The frame is the most important thing, because without the frame, the building will fall apart. Well, it's the same with writing. When we are writing, we need to know, first of all, what are we writing? So are we building a house? Are we building an apartment? Are we building a skyscraper? Are we writing a story? Are we writing information? Are we writing a personal narrative? Are we writing a poem? We have to know what we're writing. And then once we know what we're writing, we need to know what that frame is, because the frame holds your writing in place. It holds it together. Without a frame, your writing will fall apart, just like a building. So we think about the different structures or different frames of writing that in a school year children should get a lot of experience and practice in. And we begin with personal narrative writing. And personal narrative writing is all coming from ideas that have happened to us. They're personal, their experiences, and their memories. And then we have nonfiction writing. And within that big umbrella of nonfiction, I mean, a lot of us, we say with nonfiction writing, but nonfiction writing is huge. Is way more than one type of nonfiction writing. There's description, persuasion, instruction, explanatory, comparative, and biography. Those are the 6 main nonfiction. So you need to know which one of those you're writing, and then you need to know the frame for that. And then we have story writing, and story writing is your traditional, classic story that has a character with a beginning, a middle, an end, a problem, and a solution. And that is the structure of story writing. And then we have poetry. And within poetry, again, very similar to nonfiction, there are many substructures within that. So you've got the haiku, the cinquain, the list poetry, the concrete poetry. Each one of those poems has its own structure. So within the course of a year, you're going to be thinking about what are the ones that I need to be focusing on. Now, it's impossible to do all of them, and it's impossible to kind of cover it all. But when I started looking at this, I started really noticing how connected it was to brain pockets. So we have memory pocket, we have fact pocket, we have imagination, and poetry kind of covers all three. So when I started to put the book together, I realized that I could use that to try to organize my school year. So I don't want to be confused. I don't want you to be confused about what I introduce with brain pocket writing as my journal writing. I introduce that to kids at the beginning of the year, and they can choose any pocket they want to anytime throughout the year. This is more for me. This is organizing my understanding of how I want to teach these particular types of writing. So I like to look at, I'm sorry, I'm just going to turn the next. The year, first term, I focus on memory pocket writing, which is personal narrative. I like to start the year with personal narrative because it helps me establish my writing routine, my practice writes, gives me an opportunity to do lots of mini lessons, but it's not, they don't have to research. It's all from personal experience. And it doesn't have the complex structure that story writing has, which is a little bit harder to write. So that's how I sort of spend my first term. And then I do lots of mini lessons. So this is a mini lesson just from the book, how to teach emergent writers to add details. So if you read a story that I wrote a story at recess, here it is, I have a cat, the end. And then we talk about the fact that there's nothing in that story that needs details. So I introduced the 5-finger planner to add details. So we start with our topic, detail, one time, feeling. So we help the kids with that little 5-finger planner to add details to their story. So I have a cat named Sumo. Detail, Sumo has black and white fur. Another detail, Sumo likes to drink coffee. A one time a Sumo fell in the bathtub. And then a feeling that we cover our heart with, I love my cat Sumo. So that would be a mini lesson. And then we would practice that on our weekly practice writes. This is an example of I Love You, Blue Kangaroo. This was my anchor book for our practice write. It was special toys and stuffies. And so this was the anchor book I read. And then this child used the 5-finger planner. So here's your favorite stuffy, detail, one time feeling. So she talks about my best toys, Barbie. Her name is Elsa. She wears a blue dress. One time I took my Barbies in the bathtub. So this is just an example of how you can create these, but this again is all personal narrative writing. I might be teaching similes. So simile is my anchor. Simile is the strategy that I want my students to practice. There's my anchor book. And then we might use similes when we're doing our story. This is a little boy who was writing about a special grown-up. This is my favorite simile. My dad is special. My dad smells like grapefruit cologne when he goes to weddings and funerals. So brilliant, such a great line. So again, these are just examples of personal narrative writing, and that we're just using lots of mini lessons to build that up. And then in term 2, we are focusing on nonfiction writing. Now, what's interesting about nonfiction writing, as I said, is there's lots of different types of nonfiction writing. So in my book, I say, don't try to do them all in one school year. Choose 2. And in my school, each grade has chosen 2. So children are getting them all in the course of the time that they're at school. But we're not like stressing out about having to teach them all in every grade. So instructional writing, we use practice writes at the beginning with no research required. So this would be how to make your bed, put that blanket on, put your stuffy on and make your blanket flat. How to get ready for school. These are all kind of practice writes, but we're learning the language and the structure of instruction. I like to use the anchor books, as I mentioned, how to build a snowman. But then eventually, I love how to be a pirate. So they're practicing sort of the flow and the language and the structure. But eventually, we're going to tie it into information because this is nonfiction writing. So How to Be a Butterfly is a great anchor book that is written about a butterfly, but it's written as an instructional text rather than descriptive text. So then we talk about how to turn a description into instruction. So raccoons live in the forest near a water supply. That's description. How do you turn that into instruction? Live in the forest near water. And so then I got the kids to research an animal, but rather than write it as a report, they wrote it as instructions. How to be a red fox. You should live for 12 years, weigh 6 kilograms, live near a forest. So that idea of using the content, but using it in different forms of writing. This was the K1 class. We just pared it down and gave them just these headers. And then they wrote about a Canadian animal how to be a skunk. So live in a hollow tree, eat delicious food, have black and white fur, spray a bad smell, etc. And then that's a little Pinteresty, but I have to tell you, it was great learning because they learned how to write instructions, they did their research, and then they incorporated them both. And then finally, we have story writing, which a lot of people think is the easiest kind of writing. So let's all write stories in grade 2. But in actual fact, story writing is the most complicated type of writing that you can teach and for children to do because of the complexity of the structure. It is very difficult to create a character who has a problem and then resolve that problem. And it's hard for adults to do it. It's certainly hard for kids to do it. So we review what are the elements of a story. How do you, and then it's all about the planning. In story writing, it takes us 6 weeks to write one story because we go through it so slowly. We develop our character. Who is your character? What do they look like? What is their inside personality? What is their outside, like the inside and outside of our character? So we have to really, really get to know our character really well. And then we make this amazing, very detailed plan, the setting, the problem. And then this is so important. Tell your story. So you take your plan, find a partner, and go through the whole thing and then tell somebody else. And then you're ready to write. So story writing is difficult, but I've laid it out in the book in that chapter, and I've given you all the mini lessons. So if you're just wanting to do story writing, everything's in there that you need. I think, oh my goodness, I just got through all my slides. I can't believe it. And I was talking really fast. I don't even know what time it is, but we got through it. There's my contact. I can send this slide deck if people are interested, or like the handout that goes with it. And those are my books that I've written. Powerful Understanding is the one I said it's a good link for Larry's book. I do a weekly blog, and I just want to let you know that during COVID, when everything kind of shut down, I started adding these, I called them ollies, online learning lesson ideas, and they're on my blog. You can go back. I think I probably did 8 of them, and they're all based on an anchor book. There's a download, and there's something that you can use either online or if you're doing a virtual lesson or an in-class lesson. And I am doing a webinar Pro D series next year. There are 2 different webinar series. One is for powerful writing structures. One is for powerful understanding. There are 4 parts, so you can go into my my website and link on that. And I think I'm done. Oh my gosh, did I totally go overtime? Okay, I did. No, everyone's gone. They're all making supper now, and they're all sleeping or doing something else because I talk so much. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it's great. Everyone is saying thank you as they did for the other 2 as well. So Adrienne, thank you. And there was one question about discount on books, and it was asked earlier as well. Please keep track of our website as we post specials there. And if it's a board purchase, please feel free to contact us, and we will see what we can do. I think we're coming to the end of our chat right now, and there's not any sort of emerging questions coming out. So I think folks will say goodbye now. And just before we do that, Alana and Larry and Adrienne, thank you so much for bringing your passion to our session today. It was contagious. You could tell by the comments that people enjoyed the messages that you had and the practical applications and handouts you were able to share with us. So thank you so much for taking the time over the summer to get this organized for us. And we look forward to doing it again. And for everyone else that came in today, thank you very much. I think you know us at Pembroke Publishers as Practical Books for Teaching and Learning. And hopefully now we can add to providing webinars to support our authors and deliver those practical ideas to you. So have a great evening, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.